Special delivery.
Oh, it's you.
Oh, come on, guys. It's Mrs. Klein.
And Mr. Creighton.
We are here for your Lesson 6 podcast, Life in Medieval Towns. And as always, you can have your history book open. Page 77 is where you're going to find the beginning of this information. And for this particular lesson, the guiding question is, what was life like in medieval European towns?
All right, guys, there are a ton of vocab words, so just be ready. All right. They are apprentice, charter, common law, guild.
Oh, that's so many.
That's it. I guess I still don't know how to count.
Okay, all right, not a ton, but that's okay. 4 of them.
4.
Okay, all right, guys. We're going to get into the introduction for this particular lesson. At the start of the Middle Ages, most lived in the countryside, either on feudal manors or in religious communities.
But by the 12th century, towns were emerging around castles and monasteries and along trade routes. These bustling towns became centers of trade and industry.
In this lesson, you will first learn about the growth of medieval towns. Then you're going to look at several aspects of daily life. You will explore trade and commerce, homes and households, disease and medical treatment, crime and punishment, and finally, leisure and entertainment.
Woo woo. All right, Section 1, the growth of medieval towns. By the High Middle Ages, towns were growing again. One reason for the growth was improvements in agriculture. Another reason for the growth of towns was the revival of trade.
Some towns grew wealthier because local people specialized in making specific types of goods. For example, towns in Flanders, which is in present-day Belgium, and the Netherlands were known for their fine woolen cloth.
At the beginning of the Middle Ages, towns were generally part of the domain of a feudal lord. As towns grew wealthier, town dwellers began to resent the lord's feudal rights and his demands for taxes.
So then many towns became independent by purchasing a royal charter, which granted them the right to govern themselves, make laws, and raise their own taxes.
All right, guys, Section 2 is guilds. Medieval towns began as centers for trade, but they soon developed into places where many goods were produced as well. Both trade and production were overseen by organizations called guilds.
Guilds provided help and protection for the people during doing a certain kind of work, and they maintained high standards.
Guild members paid dues to their organization, which paid for the construction of guild halls and for guild fairs and festivals.
It was not easy to become a member of a guild. Starting around the age of 12, a boy and sometimes a girl became an apprentice.
At the end of 7 years, apprentices had to prove to the guild that they had mastered their trade. If the guild approved of the work, the apprentice was given the right to become a master instead of his or her own business.
All right, now moving on to trade and commerce. As trade and commerce grew, so did towns. By the High Middle Ages, more local people were buying and selling more kinds of products.
With the growth of trade and commerce, merchants grew increasingly powerful and wealthy. Not everyone prospered, however. Medieval towns commonly had stable or sizable Jewish communities, but in Christian Europe, they often faced deep prejudice. The hostility of Christians, sometimes backed up by laws, made it difficult for Jews to earn their living.
One opportunity that was open to Jews was to become bankers and moneylenders. This work was generally forbidden to Christians. They were still often looked down upon and abused for practicing this kind of wicked trade.
All right, looking at Section 4, homes and households. Medieval towns were typically small and crowded. In poorer neighborhoods, several families might occupy a single house with only one room in which they cooked, ate, and slept.
Wealthy merchants often had splendid homes. But even for wealthy families, life was not always comfortable compared to life today.
Growing up in a medieval town wasn't easy either. About half of all children died before they became adults, and those who did survive began preparing for their adult roles around the age of 7.
Oh my gosh. So you guys would already have been in adulthood basically by about like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thinking about becoming parents even at this particular stage of life, because you didn't live very long in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, you peaked in 7th grade. Way to go.
In general, people of the Middle Ages believed in an orderly society in which everyone knew their place.
All right, taking a look at Section 5, disease and medical treatment. Unhealthy living conditions in medieval towns led to the spread of disease. Towns were very dirty places.
People lived crowded together in small spaces and usually bathed only once a week, if that. PU, that's gross. All right, rats and fleas were common and often carried diseases.
Common diseases for which there was no cure at this time included measles, cholera, there you go, smallpox, and scarlet fever. The most feared disease was bubonic plague, known as the Black Death.
Oh my gosh. At this time, you guys, no one knew exactly how diseases were spread. Medieval doctors believed in a combination of prayer and medical treatment, many involving herbs to treat people with disease or who had disease.
Other treatments were based on less scientific methods. For example, medieval doctors sometimes consulted the positions of the planets and relied on magic charms to heal people.
All right, now we're moving on to crime and punishment. Besides being unhealthy, medieval towns were noisy, smelly, crowded, and often unsafe.
So they were in middle school.
There you go.
People accused of crimes were held in dirty, crowded jails.
In the early Middle Ages, trial by ordeal or combat was often used to establish an accused person's guilt or innocence.
Punishments for crimes were very harsh. Executions were carried out in public, often in front of large crowds.
So people came to watch.
Yep.
All right, in England, kings in the early 1100s began creating a nationwide system of royal courts. The decisions of royal judges contributed to a growing body of common law.
All right, looking at our last section, leisure and entertainment. Many aspects of town life were challenging and people worked hard, but they also participated in leisure activities.
Townspeople took time off from work to celebrate special days such as religious feasts.
Fair days were especially festive as jugglers, dancers, and clowns entertained the fairgoers.
Guilds also staged mystery plays in which they acted out Bible stories.
Mystery plays gave rise to another type of religious drama, the miracle play.
All right. Now, this is a summary of our lesson, you guys. At the beginning of the Middle Ages, most Europeans lived in the countryside, but by about 1200, however, towns were growing.
Guilds, trade, and commerce. Many towns were wealthy enough to purchase a charter that made them independent from feudal lords. An economy based on trade and commerce significantly changed daily life. Guilds became leading forces in their communities. Farmers brought crops and merchants brought many goods to sell in town marketplaces.
All right. And now homes and households. Homes varied depending upon how wealthy or poor a family was. Most families had small, crowded homes with only a fireplace for heat. Few children were educated. Girls married relatively early and boys began work as early as 7. That's not 7 in the morning, that's 7 years old.
You'd be in first grade.
Yikes.
Disease and treatment. Medieval towns were crowded, noisy, and dirty, just like middle school. Diseases spread rapidly, and many people could not be cured with the medical knowledge of the time.
All right, now crime and punishment. Crime was a problem in medieval towns, and it was punished harshly. Prisons were filthy, dark places, and many prisoners had to buy their own food even.
Leisure and entertainment. Despite the hardships in a medieval town, many types of leisure activities made life more enjoyable for town dwellers, including games, fairs, festivals, and religious plays put on by the guilds.
All right, you guys, just as a reminder, there were the four vocabulary words. They were apprentice, charter, common law, and guild.
And our guiding question that you should be able to answer right now is, what was life like in medieval European towns?
All right, you guys, see you soon.
Love you tons.